The talk of a better quality of life in Europe is for Europeans because it's their country, it's their culture they know and love. It is not the American culture. I really think this is all a bunch of smoke and mirrors. For some reason, they want Americans to feel bad about their 9-to-5 workload while making it seem like Europeans have a better work-life balance schedule because they take a longer lunch break and throw in a little family time into the mix. Well, guess what? I hate to break it to you, but Americans, hello and welcome to our Retire Early lifestyle. Today we're going to share a perspective about moving abroad that may just surprise you because it goes against the grain. We're not seeing this anywhere else yet. Let's start with quality of life, or what some folks refer to as work-life balance. We're continually told through the vested interests how much better our life will be if only we move to Europe, often touting Spain, Germany, France, Italy, and Portugal. Excuse me, but where on earth are people getting their information? Let's start with work aspect of work-life balance, and we'll get to the quality of life later on in the video. Sure, in Europe they work less hours, take longer in yearly vacations, and take 3-hour lunch breaks. So what? The truth is, Europeans make way less money than American workers do, and they take out way more taxes too, sometimes 2 and 3 times as much. Take a look. For an individual earning 30,000 euros in Italy, they take out 7,400 euros, which is 24.67%. In Norway, for someone that makes 30,000 euros, they take out 6,975 euros, or 23.25%. In Spain, they take out 7,165.50 for taxes, which is about 23.88% of their income. And an individual earning $30,000 in the U.S. has $1,561.50 taken out, which is 5.2% of their income. Here it is in summarized. What do you think about this? In Europe, the typical wage earner pays about 20% more in taxes on equivalent yearly income than Americans do. You can buy a lot of lunches for all that tax money. But now let's say you make the median household income of the U.S., which is $67,000 a year. You would still not pay as much in taxes as your European counterparts pay on half the income of just 30,000 euros. So in Europe, they are very tax heavy. $67,000 in the U.S. is about $6,355 they take out, which is 9.47% of your income. I don't know about you, but this is very telling. It means if you get a job while living in Europe, you're actually going to work harder, meaning you're really earning fewer wages per hour because of the taxes taken from your hard-earned pay. And even though the cost of living is lower in some parts of Europe, it's not all that much lower in the cities where people usually have to be working at these jobs. This is just something to think about next time you hear the vested interests talk about work-life balance being better in Europe than the USA. Now let's move on to the life aspect of the phrase work-life balance. Now I take life to mean our personal lifestyle. It involves scheduling and managing what we do outside of our work life to bring our lives more balanced. Many wage-earning Americans say they don't have time to do anything after work because they work long hours and they're exhausted after work, and this is a legitimate complaint. The typical American wage earner's day starts at 9 a.m. and they work until 12 p.m. where they get anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour for lunch. Then they go back to work until 5 or 6 p.m. and most people have to add the commuting to those hours. This is why in the U.S. the work-life balance is sometimes referred to as the 9-to-5 rat race or the hamster wheel because there is minimal balance. Americans work like dogs to live a comfortable lifestyle, but instead of enjoying the lifestyle they work for, they accumulate debt and then have to work even harder to pay off that debt and keep up with the Joneses. But this is a personal choice. At the end of the day, most Americans have no energy left for doing anything with the family or for themselves. They come home tired and hungry. They cook a meal, watch an hour of TV, and go to bed and start the whole process all over again. The hamster wheel. In Spain, Italy, France, and Portugal, where work-life balance is often touted as better, the typical wage earner works from 9 to 1 p.m., taking a 2-hour lunch break, and then they go back to work and work until 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. This is why they eat their last meal between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. They work the same hours as a typical wage earner in America, but the schedule is just a bit different. And guess what? Europeans are tired too after working all day, even though they take a 2-hour long lunch break and maybe even a short siesta. It's so funny how the media loves to say how Europe's work-life balance is so much better because Europeans take a 2-hour lunch break and socialize with family. Yes, that may be true, but they also work later into the evening than most Americans. By the time Europeans come home from work, it's 7 or 8 p.m. in the evening and they still haven't eaten dinner. So the touted European better working schedule appears to be a manifestation of their individual family values rather than better goodwill emanating from the companies they work for. Family values is a part of the culture. Do Americans really think, though, they're going to move to Europe, get a job, and have a better work-life balance just because of a 2-hour lunch break and socializing with family during that 2 hours? This is actually just a big aspect of the culture in Southern Europe. Many European cultures place a high value on their leisure time and family life. In some European countries, it is common for employees to leave work on time and avoid after-hours communication, whereas in the U.S., there can be a culture of always being on and working late. It would seem Americans are more work-focused and ambitious than their European counterparts. During the day, it is about their job and work and the projects they need to accomplish for that day. They're not thinking about Aunt Jane's wedding coming up on the weekend. That comes later. For now, Americans are going to stay in work mode until they get off work or the weekend comes. The talk of a better quality of life in Europe is for Europeans because it's their country, it's their culture they know and love. It is not the American culture. I really think this is all a bunch of smoke and mirrors. For some reason, they want Americans to feel bad about their 9-to-5 workload while making it seem like Europeans have a better work-life balance schedule because they take a longer lunch break and throw in a little family time into the mix. Well, guess what? I hate to break it to you, but Americans also enjoy time off with family after work and on the weekends. They may go to the lake or beach for a picnic, or they may take a walk or hike with friends and family, or go out to eat and to a movie with their spouse and or family. Americans do the same things as the Europeans do. Isn't that something? Americans may not mix in family time, take long lunches and siestas into their workday, though. But maybe that's why businesses in America, especially service-type businesses, have such a better work ethic than Europe does. We all know that Southern Europe has terrible customer service. The complaints from people all over the internet attest to that fact. Restaurants in European capitals have the worst customer service, but in America, the service is usually outstanding to good. When I visited the U.S. for the first time a few years ago, I was astonished by how good the service was everywhere. That includes touristic spots. I've never felt so welcome in my life, and I would give anything to change the level of hospitality service in touristic spots in Europe as well. It shouldn't surprise anyone that the countries with the worst customer service also don't rely on tips. And so this tells us they're not going out of their way to give the customer good service in Europe like they do in America. Why is customer service so bad in Southern Europe? There is a lot of speculation why customer service is so bad in Southern Europe. Tell us what you think in the comments. They say cultural differences will alter the customer service experience, and I believe that to be very true. Have you ever seen some of the complaints on the internet coming from the Europeans themselves? Many like to say that Americans are demanding and think they are entitled to have things their way. Is this true or just a cultural difference? Well, let's take a look. There are ugly Americans everywhere in the world, but for the most part, looking at the bigger picture, it's probably not entitlement or demanding at all. It's the differences in culture, such as Americans expect good and relatively efficient service when they go out to eat, and they might not get that in a slower, laid-back culture such as Spain, France, or Portugal. And so that's really what it comes down to. But the Europeans take it as an insult on how they do things. When we first moved to Ecuador, we went out to dinner and everything was very laid back and enjoyable. But at the end of the meal, we waited and waited for the check, and it never came. I think we sat in the restaurant for another 45 minutes wondering where our check was. We finally had to wave down the waiter. In Latin America, in the nicer dining restaurants, they think it is rude to bring the check to the table right after you eat because they think it makes them look like they want you to leave the table quickly so they can hurry up and wait on the next customer. But in reality, that's not the case at all. They don't bring the bill to the table until you ask for it or you start walking up to the cashier, and then they'll bring it to the cashier at that time. It's just part of the culture. Southern Europe is much like Latin America in that respect. However, I have to admit the customer service is much better in Latin America than in Europe, and the Latin Americans also seem happier at their jobs, and they come off as much more congenial people. If I were to vote about who has the best work-life balance attitude, it would have to be the Latin Americans, hands down. They're happier people, and by the way, we've never heard the Latins say Americans think they're entitled or are demanding. That only comes from Europe. And quite frankly, to say that Americans feel entitled or are demanding people sounds like an attitude problem and more like resentment. And in that case, where is the work-life balance attitude we're being told is so prevalent in Europe, especially from the southern countries? We don't see it. If there were a decent work-life balance in Europe, you would see it in the friendliness of the work population, and well, that's hard to come by in Europe. When Frank and I were in Europe, we noticed a frustration and somewhat unhappy work staff from the transportation department to the airlines to the restaurant businesses. Europeans seemed overworked and underpaid. In a nutshell, we saw no balance or contentment from the working staff in most service businesses, and that's a fact. We even made a video about it, how the European workers just seemed uptight at their jobs. Ironically, Americans also seem happier at their jobs, especially in the service businesses. We just recently flew on Delta Airlines, not knowing what to expect, but the staff and the service were outstanding. Everyone seemed friendly and happy. The whole affair was efficient, organized, and went off without a hitch. On another grim note, we have taken many European airlines and got canceled, and there was no customer service to speak of. It was awful. The airlines of the Americas, that includes Latin America too, wins again. Bottom line, most folks believe the hype about Europe having a better work-life balance. But it should be showing in the people, don't you think? Is it because they don't work overtime? Could it be they take a 2-hour lunch break and spend time socializing with family while being served 5 courses and taking slow bites of food? Is that why they have a better work-life balance? I don't think so. What happens when they go back to work? Why are they seem so unhappy? Just think, Americans working the same hours as the Europeans make twice as much money, sometimes 3 times as much. And Europeans pay 2 to 3 times more in taxes. Please scroll back in this video to see the screenshots on that. And you really think you're going to move to Europe and have a better work-life balance? Where is this coming from? Someone's been conned, that's all we can say. Of course, if you're working in dollars for a US company and getting paid in dollars while living in Europe, now that's a different story, but that's not what we're talking about in this video. And even so, there are still many aspects of life that you have to think about when it comes to work-life balance when living in a foreign country, okay? None of the challenges disappear because you're living in Europe and working on your laptop earning US dollars. You're still gonna have the same challenges. So, folks, we left you with much to consider here and with a perspective that no one ever talks about, at least not that we've seen. We just think that here we are, we're gonna move to Europe, we'll get a good paying job in France, Spain, or Germany, and all our imbalance in life from working too hard in the USA is gonna go away. We'll finally be happy. Or will we? I think we need to start looking at the glass half full and realizing we have abundance right here in our own backyard if we want it. Maybe we have to make some changes in our lifestyle to have that better quality of life. So then make those changes. No better place to live and work and enjoy your hard-earned money than right here in your own backyard. Another country is not going to provide the quality of life we are needing. It only provides a band-aid to our frustrations, and it's only momentary. It all fades away, and then you're stuck in a foreign country with a culture that is completely opposite from what you know and love. When we start to realize our blessings in life, we become blessed because we are what we think and what we do. Thanks for coming to the video. Stay blessed and have a great day. Bye-bye.